Hello, Engineering Space Cadet. So today we're going to have a coding session, just a very brief one, just to get you familiar and used to coding in Python. So sometimes you just make a lot of mistakes and you're coding, you're worried that you don't know what you're talking about or you don't know how to actually program or code because you're making so many mistakes, and that's totally fine. I think that's something that's completely normal and a normal part of the process of learning, right? So today we're just going to code a very basic speech recognition, which I know doesn't sound as basic as it is, but it is relatively basic. And we're just going to implement some of the properties and some of the things that we learned previously to get certain things to happen. It's going to be really cool. Okay, so I hope you're ready. Let's get started.
On the spaceship, now I'm a space cadet. Big white legend in my habitat.
So if you're not familiar with Python and coding in Python and PyCharm, we have some very, very interesting things that we can do with Python. So this time we're going to create a speech to text output. So whatever we say is going to come out as text in the console. We can then use this to control a bunch of different things. But for now, we're going to get some basic speech to text. And this is very, very useful. So if you're wondering how something like an Alexa or a Siri assistant or something like that may interpret your speech and then turn that into text and then use that text data to search for something or do some option in your on your phone or your computer or something like that, or on your like standalone device. This is kind of what they end up implementing to have some kind of assistant. So this time we're going to turn our speech into text, and we're going to use that to control a bunch of different things, right? So first of all, we need a library that we can then use to call that library because someone has already done all the hard work for us, understand how to read documentation, implement that into a program, and then have some kind of functional program that we can then use for just a profile or something like that, or just to show that you understand the basics of the coding language. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, there's going to be a couple libraries that you need. One thing that I know is we're going to use this library called speech recognition. Now, there are a bunch of other options that we do need just to make sure that everything is running correctly. And I'm going to start here. So I'm going to open up this terminal and see if it's actually recognizing a virtual environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a virtual environment for our Python, and we're going to run a virtual environment with a Python interpreter, because when we create a virtual environment, it basically gives us a version of Python that has no installed libraries. So if you're coming from a different project and you have something else that has a bunch of files and a bunch of libraries for something else that you may not need here, we just get a sleek down, simplified version of that Python interpreter, and then we can install any packages that we want to. But this also isolates it from our system Python interpreter, which allows us to have any libraries that we're using in one really small version that we're just using for our project specifically. So we don't need to install all the libraries across the system just for our particular version for our project. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create that virtual version or that virtual environment, and then we're going to start installing libraries that we need to write the code, and then we're going to write the basic code, and then we're going to implement some more advanced features. Hopefully this happens fairly quickly, but you know, when you're coding, you never know how long it's going to take. So we're going to go down here in PyCharm, and PyCharm has this very nice implementation for creating virtual environments. And we're going to go down here, and as you can see, there's a virtual environment here for 3.11. And I think that version is not actually on my system currently. So we're going to add a new interpreter and add a local interpreter. Now you can see this is going from the version, or like from the current location where my programming files are located. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a get ignore later, or I'm going to do a get ignore later. So you're not actually going to see this virtual environment. It's not something that's going to be pushed into GitHub. So you're going to have to create this part by yourself. But I'm going to walk you through it step by step just to make sure it's a lot easier. Okay. So when you install Python, it comes in some location, and normally there's a system interpreter that we're kind of using. So if you go here to system interpreter and you're running Python, it probably tells you the current location where your Python version is, which is totally fine. We can just take that location, we can copy it, right? Now, I have a bunch of different locations for Python. I have a bunch of different versions of Python on my computer, but currently, right now, I'm going to use this Python 3.10.11, which you see the underscores. I just replaced that for the dots. And you see this Python exe. So this is where we need to locate our Python version. This right here is actually going to create the virtual environment, but for now, we're just going to use this Python exe. And we're going to go to virtual environment here, create a new based on the location of our base interpreter, which is basically that version I pointed to. And we're just going to click OK. And it should create a virtual environment in our current location. And you can see right here, there is no, we should see there that when we take this terminal and we just log out the terminal and log back in, you should see that it is giving us this virtual environment. And if we do python.exe --version, it should tell us that we're currently running 3.10.11. Now, just something really quick, just to check. If I was to look at my system, where this is normally where I'm pushing code to, and I look at my system interpreter, Python dash version here, and you can see that my system's version of Python is 3.12.2. And that's just letting you know that I'm using a different version of Python to run my code. You may not have multiple versions of Python on your computer currently, but I do. So I'm just going to use this version because a lot of features and a lot of libraries are based or updated to about this version, and the newer versions of Python like 3.12 are not updated for all libraries. So if you're building something new, you may want to go back to a previous version of Python just because a lot of libraries have not been updated currently. Okay, so let's get started with that. We're going to go to our browser here, and we're going to go to this internal repository, or not internal repository, but this like public repository for a bunch of libraries for Python, and it's called PyPy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to Google, which is something very simple that we can go and do, and type in Python speech recognition, just like that. And we'll go to this pypy.org location for project speech recognition. Now, this is a very popular speech recognition library. The speech recognition library is very, very popular for everything because it allows us to use the features of speech recognition from a bunch of different APIs into one really solid location. And you can see right here which versions is updated to. So you can see it's updated to 3.8, 3.9, 3.10, 3.11, but you don't see any implementation for 3.12 just yet. It's not saying that's not going to happen, but knowing which versions are available lets you know, hey, can I use this with my Python version or not? And the implementation and also the features may only go up to about 3.11 at the moment, because that may be LTS, or it just may be the latest supported version of Python for that library. And eventually they will have updated versions of those libraries because they tend to be pretty good about updating them. We can go down here and we can look at release history here. And you can see the last time that the releases were done, which is about December 6th. So the next time you see some kind of update, and you can see that there's a couple months between releases. And the next time you see an update here will probably be in 2024, maybe in December. Maybe you'll see it in March like this, and just a new version that is updated with your current version of Python. It happens every couple months, so I wouldn't overstress it. If you have a newer version of Python and you don't see it there, just install an older version of Python. So for here, we're going to see a couple different ways that we can use speech recognition. So you see this Sphinx, you see this Google speech recognition, the Google Cloud speech API, and some of this stuff may be a bit deprecated. It may be deprecated. As you can see, it will tell you that this Bing voice recognition has been deprecated. And right now you don't see this Google speech recognition. It doesn't necessarily mean it's deprecated, and we will try to use that version if we can. But if we can't, we'll try to adjust for a different version of speech recognition. And the one I've been using recently is this OpenAI Whisper. I don't use this Whisper API because the Whisper API specifically requires an API key. Similar to this Google Speech API, I believe that this one requires an API key as well. And if you're running this in your program, you may not want to pass an API key or may not know how to use an API key at the moment. So trying to use something like this speech recognition may not be the best idea. So we're going to go on to install our libraries as we need, and we're going to make sure that we're getting complete implementation as we can. Okay, so let's get started. So one thing you can notice up here is this pip install speech recognition. Now, pip install just allows you to install libraries from this internal PyPI repository, or maybe not internal, but like the repository for PyPI. This one is available for most Python versions, unless you're coming from a business where it doesn't allow you to just directly call from PyPI. Maybe they have their internal repository for the libraries they have seen are acceptable, because you understand that these are open source. And because they're open source, there's a potential for security vulnerabilities or someone uploading malicious code to PyPI and then you're using their library, and that can be a liability for businesses. However, a lot of the cases when you have these specific open source libraries, a lot of them are sometimes vetted and determined to be safe to use within a company. So if you're able to access these, they'll just be able to be used pretty easily. Now, I'm sure that if you're using something like Amazon Echo or Siri, they may have their own like source, like their source code for their devices. This one's just open source and anyone can use it to build anything. And I believe that this has a a BDS license, and this just allows us to use this and a bunch of different things. So if we do license approvals, let's go back. I think I can look that up for you just to give you an idea what a BDS license is. So you can see we have this 3-clause BDS license, and redistributions of the source code must be retained above the copyright notice. This conditions list of conditions are the following disclaimer. Redistributions in binary must be reproduction of the above copyright notice, and the list of conditions is following disclaimer and documentation or other materials provided with the distribution. There's just a bunch of legal jargon, but basically, if I can find the GitHub for this, it normally tells you, let's see if we can find the examples, example directory. Let's see if it pulls us to the GitHub. And if we look here on the speech recognition, there's a lot of legal jargon. It tells you blah, blah, blah. This is what it can do. This is what it can't do. And you see this GPL 2 public license. And I think that certain licenses allow you to use it commercially and other things like that. It may be the GPL 2 general purpose license that allows you to do that, but I don't know if that's the only license for it. But we have 2 different licenses. So it's copyright. The software is provided by the copyright holders, and as is implies warranties, including but not limited to implied warranties of merchandisability and fitness for a particular purpose, not disclaimer. But you can see right here for the permissions, you can see that it's for commercial use. That's the most important aspect of it. But it also is saying that they don't have liability or warranty for this particular product. So you can use this for a commercial product if you want it to, for modification, redistribution, and for private use as well. So I think that's the most important thing to know about this library, that you can use it for your own product. So if you build something off of this, you don't have to worry about, it's like, do I have to license this or that? I know this maybe may be too much into the weeds, but I just want to bring this up just so you know that this is an open source thing that you can use for whatever products you decide to develop. We haven't actually coded anything, so let's get on to the coding. So first of all, we're going to go down here in this Python. And since we're running this virtual interpreter here, this virtual environment with this interpreter, we can just do this -m, which is going to be mount, and we're going to pip install, and we're going to install speech recognition. Now, I think on the actual website, it does give you a copy link, which I probably should have just typed because it probably just made things easier, or just copy it and paste it. So we'll just go back here. There's a couple of these back as it's installing. And you can see right here, you could just copy this and then paste that in. Now we're going to try to directly use the Google recognition, and I'll show you how to do that. So one thing you can do here is sometimes certain libraries require an updated pip. So we can just run this down here. Python's really nice about that. You can paste it, run this upgraded pip. So we won't have that error again, the one that's telling you to upgrade the pip. So for here, we're just going to import speech recognition. Okay, so import speech underscore recognition as SR. It should have been installed, I believe. And then we can take SR dot, yeah, so there we go. Okay, so now we can have a microphone, and we can equal that to SR.microphone, and we're going to use these parentheses as well, and then we're going to have a recognizer, and that's going to equal SR.recognizer. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically use a with open, and that with open allows us to open up this class and use it as a specific file, and then call that file as something that's going on here. Right, so I can just type in with and then microphone as source. And this source is going to be the source of our audio. So we're recording on a microphone right now, so we're going to try to use that. We can print some message out to the user. And we can say something like begin speaking now, and normally if you have a thing like a assistant, and an assistant will make a beep sound, so it lets you know that you're talking. That's just an audio output of basically our print statement. So you can be like, oh, just play this audio when it starts recording, just boop, and then it lets the user know that they need to start recording at that moment. But for here, since we're not actually doing that, we're just going to print out a statement, and then it just lets us know that we can print out something and just run it. Okay, so for here, I'm going to have this recognizer just like this, and we're going to listen, and we're going to listen to the source, and we can just set this as audio because this is going to be the audio that we're trying to interpret. Use insert there. So equal recognizer, like here. So, and then we're going to do exception handling, which is something I didn't go into. So maybe I shouldn't do exception handling, but regardless, I'm just going to do a print. And for now, we're just going to say that Google thinks you said, and then we're going to add in this recognizer dot Google, or like recognize, and you can see this is Google Cloud. I don't want to use Google Cloud because Google Cloud requires an API key, and I'm just going to pass in this audio. And then we're just going to do an exception, accept SR as unknown value error. And then we can just print out some statement. Google couldn't receive maybe audio, and then we could just put in, we could just have that some unknown value error. Could interpret audio, just something to let the user know that we're trying to do this one thing, and if this thing doesn't work, then we're gonna do something else. Now, I know there's probably going to be a problem with the microphone at the moment because there's multiple microphones that could be possibly used, which is like my phone, my microphone that I'm speaking into. It could be like my laptop's microphone. It could be a bunch of different things. So before we do all that, I'm going to check which microphones are possible. So we're going to basically comment this out, which that's a control / and I'm gonna go back to the website here, and this is great documentation. So when you're coding, you want to read the documentation so you'll know kind of the features of the library you're using. And you can see that this right here is requiring some PyAudio. We probably don't have that installed, so we probably need to install this PyAudio, which I'll install in a second. And because we need to use the PyAudio for microphones. But one thing that I want to do is troubleshoot just in case for certain issues where it may not be able to detect the input device, or it's expecting a specific device index. And I can just copy this code right here, which this is a for loop that is enumerating over the index and of the name of the microphone. So we'll just list that out. And essentially what will happen is it will fill out the index specifically with the enumerate index, and it'll tell you, hey, this microphone's index number is whatever is coming from this enumeration. And then the name of that microphone is coming out here. So this will just tell us this enumeration. This is a for loop, which will tell you the position of the index over, it'll tell you the position over this array, and it will also tell you the name of the value of this microphone's names. And we'll just print that out so we'll know exactly which microphones we're going to end up using. So currently, I will take this code over this enumeration, and it's just a very basic for loop. It's a more advanced for loop. I don't know if I went over it in the previous video, and I may go into it in more advanced topics when it comes to Python. So for now, we're just going to take this, and we're going to replace this sr.microphone with just microphone, because we already have it defined as sr microphone. And we can just run this code here. And it says that you can't find the PyAudio. Like I said, we're probably going to have to install that. So we're just going to go into the terminal. We're going to hit the up key, install, and then I'm going to install PyAudio. Okay, cool. Should be good now, and run it. Give it a second, and now you see a bunch of microphones pop up. Now, if you're speaking into a microphone like a USB mic, it may be kind of the problem when it's trying to recognize it. And currently, I'm using this Yeti microphone here, and you can see the device index is 2. So I'm going to go up here to this SR microphone, and I'm going to have device index, and I'm just going to set that equal to 2. Just so when I start speaking, it can recognize my audio from that particular device. Otherwise, it has all these different devices it can try to potentially use, and that's going to be a problem. So now I can just comment this out, And I'm gonna keep it here just in case you want to just uncomment it and use it. And we're going to take this and we're going to try to use this recognize Google. Now, again, this may be a deprecated class and it may still work. It may not work. We'll check and see if it still does. Okay. So we're going to run this code. Are you currently listening right now? And see, works perfectly fine. It says, are you currently listening right now? Perfect, right? Now we can also use different microphone versions and other speech recognition if we'd like to as well. This again is like the default recognizer audio, or like recognizer for text to speech. It's very publicly available, kind of the default that people are thinking about. So kind of perfect to use. But if we want to use something different, we could go back into this library and we could use a different version. We could probably use a newer open source library, something like this Whisper, which I've been using recently, and use this to just send information or data to a certain location. This could be a lot better or worse, depending. I think there's a lot more support for the Google's default speech recognition. But if you're trying to use a bunch of stuff with OpenAI, maybe you want to just use this for Whisper API. Maybe you have an API key and you just want to use those tokens and just send those here if you want to. A lot of these other versions require API keys and you don't want to end up using those. So right now we don't want to do that. So how can we use this default version to just do some really cool stuff? All right, so let's jump into that. So let's say, for example, we want to do something very basic. And we take this and we're going to say that this is our text output. Our text output is equal to recognizer dot recognize Google, and then we'll just take in our audio source like this, and we can do something basic. So if we say that if get time is in text.output, we can import datetime, and then we can print f here the time is datetime dot datetime, I believe, and we could just try this out. Get the current time. Save doesn't really give us anything, so let's print this out as well. Print f dot, actually probably don't need this, just print text out because it's just string. Get time. So doesn't work that way, so we can just have dot lower and get and time get and time are in text.out lower, get date time. Okay. Get the current time. Okay, missing required argument year and position. And years equal 20, 24. Can you get the current time right now? And it's also missing month. So like a lot of this stuff right here is just probably just trying to get a specific time. So let's just try this time. Like this. Let's see if there's any optional arguments in here. Okay. Can you get the current time? Okay, so it says the current time is 000, which is not the current time right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our date time library, Python. And we're going to see currently, let's see, smallest. Let's see. It may not be daytime. Maybe it's just time. We'll see. Time delta. Let's see. Time delta. Maybe it's like a system time thing. Because this just seems to be more formatting at the moment and allowing us to kind of print it out a specific way. I kind of want to get the date time from the system. So let's see if this is the one. Datetime.utc now. And deprecated since 3.12. UTC. Let's try that. Let's see. Let's just kind of Google it. Get current time and Python. So I'm thinking it may be UTC. So again, it's very possible that that is the way that we do it. So we can try to do that. And daytime. So what was it now? So it's date time, something like that. Daytime now. So it's datetime.datetime. Datetime.datetime. Dot now, and then we type in datetime. Dot time zone. Dot UTC. That may be how we do it, and we'll just try to do it right now. Can you get the current time right now? And there we go. It's a lot better. It's UTC. Not the current time, my location right now. So let's see if we can get different versions, different formats. And let's just try to get different time zones. Done. Let's go back here to date time zone. Yeah, so that UTC object was pretty good. So let's try to figure out different time zones. Control F. Time zone objects. Let's see if we give different time zones. Time zone objects. UTC, and time. Affected. Self. UTC. And I'm not talking as much. I probably should be. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm just like reading through a bunch of different time zones. So, and a bunch of different information. So let's see if we could do GMT, General Mountain Time, maybe. Let's see if it gives the same thing. Can you display the current time right now? Ah, see, there's no object of GMT. There is an object for UTC, but there's probably a little bit more stuff that we can actually dig into just to check. So we have UTC, and then we have like some different stuff for some offsets. So we're gonna have UTC offsets, time zone name. UTC offset in the form here. Those are format codes that don't actually need that. Returns the fixed value specified when the top time zone is instructed. Name is not provided. Return the time zone name. General the value of the offset as follows. If the offset is the time, the name is UTC, otherwise the string is here. Time zone name. So let's try this. Time zone that the time zone name like this, and then let's try General Mountain Time here. General Mountain Time, and how many? That's one, that's two. Let's see if that helps. Time zone info. Style on nesting of string literals. Well, we'll see. Let's see. Day underscore time is equal to date time. GMTC. Like that. Let's try date underscore time. Can you get the current time right now? Ah, see, doesn't apply for string objects. I probably should read the documentation more, to be honest. So I'm just gonna keep it to UTC. I'm sure there's definitely a way to do it. I'm just too lazy to figure it out at the moment. And time delta 24 hours known. I could probably just set the offset, but I'm not gonna because I'm too lazy to do it. It's just showing basically different ways to do things. I can do datetime module for geeks. Datetime class. I'm so lazy right now. Again, I'm not gonna do it because I'm way too lazy. Okay. So we're gonna try a different case. So if we could probably use some API calls to get certain information if you want it to as well. Ooh. Okay, let's try that. So if no, I'm not gonna do that. This would be too complicated for now. So let's see, what else can we do? Um, let's just call this assistant, right? So if give me and your name, if your name is in text that out. Again, this dot lower is not necessary now that I think about it, because I probably need the dot lower on the actual string. We can just print just print my name is assistant. How can I help you? My name is assistant. Period. How can I help you? And we can just run this again. Tell me your name. See? And now something I can do, just for fun, for myself, is we can make a function for this. So we're going to make a function, we'll call this define, and we're going to call this print user text. And we're going to set a value of enabled boolean is equal to false, and here it's going to return, let's see, return none string. If enabled out. I should probably talk a lot more than this. So basically, I'm giving myself a way to like pass in like certain information. So I'm just basically checking, hey, if I enable this print user text, we're going to return out my text out. And then turn. Okay. So basically, what I'm looking at is I'm basically saying, hey, if print text out is enabled, then print the text out or return the text out. Otherwise, return nothing. I'll just reformat that. And text out is from the outer scope. So we can just call it user text. And just return the user text. Doesn't really matter. So we're going to create a new one called define select start listening, and we're going to take all this stuff here and we're going to cut it, and we're just going to paste it right under here at this indent. And here we're going to pass in a value for start listening. We're going to call this a class, and it's going to be speech, let's see, assistant, and displayed submit. Not passing things specifically currently. Actually, I can make this a lot easier on myself by controlling all this and hitting tab, controlling all of this and hitting tab, and then we're going to give it a define, and we're going to have select options, and we're going to make it in self. We're going to have this text in, it's going to be a string, and we're going to basically return nothing. And we're going to take all this, paste it in here, text in, and here we're going to also have this text in. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just creating this class and taking all these options and just passing them directly to where they need to go. Self. And I'll do the same thing here. Self. And we're going to pass in an enabled. And that enabled is going to be a boolean, and it's going to be equal to false. And we're going to have this turn nothing, because we don't actually need any text to come out here. But what we can do is we can pull in this other method, which is self.print user text, and we're going to use this user text equal to text out. Then we're going to have enabled is equal to enabled. And then from here, we're going to also have this self.select options, and then we're going to have this text in as text out. Okay, so then we're going to make our if underscore main name we're going to create an object called assistant, which is equal to assistant, or we can just call it A1. A1 is equal to assistant, and then we're going to call in A1 dot start listening and enabled. It's already set. So just start listening. What is your name? See? Now if we just pass in true, just pass in true and it's enabled, then we can just tell me what your name is. See? And we need to have this as if enabled. Print here. Tell me what your name is. And you can see right there, it just fixed a very small problem. And this is just something very basic. It's just a speech recognition. And yeah, I think there's other things we can definitely do here. We can start implementing API keys and calls and just do a bunch of different things just for fun if you'd like to. So for here, we just had this like start listening. We can do a bunch of different things. We could call in like some RESTful APIs, get the weather, then do maybe a text to speech as well. And just have that come out as an output to the user where we could print it back out where they're like, oh, well, like, okay, I can see that. I can hear the assistant doing something very similar to what Siri does or some other application. We could also use it to call in and open up different applications and things like that. But for now, we're just going to have this really basic speech recognition assistant and created this class for an assistant, pass in a couple different values. And yeah, it just allows us to kind of know what's going on. I'm going to save this code and just pass it to the GitHub so you can look at it later if you'd like. I think this should be about it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coding along with me.